Welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast, where trauma survivors become healthy thrivers. Each month, we'll feature a theme in the trauma recovery and empowerment field. To promote your recovery, healing, and learning how to build dreams, here's your host, Karen Robinson, transformational coach and therapist.
Welcome to the Heal, Thrive, Dream podcast. Today, my guest is a dear friend and former coworker. Her name is Michelle Parker. Michelle is a licensed independent clinical social worker for over 10 years. She works with clients from all walks of life and helps them navigate through life's challenges. Michelle has a background in psychology and counseling, which allows her to provide a holistic approach to coaching. Michelle, thank you for being a guest on my show today.
Oh, thank you, Karen. It's good to see you.
Likewise. Michelle has agreed to be not only a speaker, but a sponsor of Finding Purpose After Trauma Summit, coming very soon in January 2026. Michelle, what about the theme of finding purpose really spoke to you and nudged you to be a speaker and sponsor this time?
So the finding purpose was meaningful to me. I really feel like a lot of people I've spoken with in the last year or year and a half they're older and they've felt like they've done some of their trauma healing. They're on their path, but they struggle as they're moving towards retirement with finding that purpose. And when you stop people pleasing, when you stop trying to do things for other people and you're really looking at yourself, like what does that look like? And so finding purpose after trauma spoke to me because I was like, this is what I do on a regular basis. And I feel like a lot of trauma survivors get into either like a freeze mode where I don't want to make any changes at all. I'm just stuck. I'm going to keep doing this. Or they've experienced that freedom, but they pull back and they're like, oh, that's too much. I can't do this. So I'm hoping that I'll be able to encourage people to find a purpose, create a purpose, find something you really have wanted to do. Maybe you put off while you are raising your kids or going to work or whatever, and now it's your time to explore that part of you. So hopefully
That was, yeah,
yeah.
that was so eloquently stated. And I know you, so I know that you are also a complex trauma survivor. And I know also the fact that we're social workers, we're trying to find some meaning. Like we probably maybe wouldn't even be social workers had our lives been super simple and easy and no trauma. Would you agree with that?
I would. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know for
What?
me, because I have complex PTSD, my child abuse started before the age of 10. And then I was a sexual abuse in middle school and high school outside the family. And I was, even when I disclosed things as a kid, nothing changed. And
Yeah.
that was probably my motivating factor for becoming a social worker because I had conversations with teachers. I had conversations with the guidance counselor. I had conversations with CPS and nothing changed until I was an adult. And so I know that for me, I don't think I would have chosen this path. I would have done something different. And it probably would have been in the creative field because that's where I started, was in animation. And I probably would have continued doing that. But I
Yeah.
wanted to
I
make a
love.
difference for parents and I wanted to
Mhm.
make a difference for kids. So hopefully I've
Yeah.
done some of that.
No, you have for sure. And Michelle, I love like you know my questions before I can even get them out. You knew I was going to ask you about your complex trauma and for those of you, most of our listeners are complex trauma survivors, but for those of you who are not sure, the initial phase of the complexity is childhood trauma. It could be neglect, physical, emotional, sexual abuse. And it doesn't have to necessarily be our family, it could be outside of the home as well. And a lot of times we're told, like, oh, you should have told somebody. And you're an example. Yeah, sometimes telling people didn't make a difference, and you're not the only person it's so frustrating, right? Like, how do we encourage our youth to use their voices and then we don't listen to them? Like, really, the voice of children still doesn't matter. Would you agree with that?
I would, and I think if anyone is paying attention to anything related to files being released in the United States regarding childhood trauma, and even when still today, when you have a lot of people saying, we want to know the truth, it's still being covered up. It's still not being voiced. It's still child abuse is, I don't know. I think it's to me, having people even say this is not in our national interest is quieting those voices and the
Yeah,
survivors. Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah. I don't even have words for that, honestly. Ah, yeah. Oh, and it's patriarchy is so interesting too, right? Because it doesn't only just hurt children and women, it really hurts men too, because men do start out as little boys, and there's a lot of little boys that also get victimized. So, yeah. Okay, that was deep and hard.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's another reason I became a social worker. I'm not very good with surface level conversation.
Oh, yeah. Like, why? Why? It's such a waste of time. Let's get to it, people. Let's talk
Yeah.
about the things that really matter. Yeah. Michelle, in your work, how do you help survivors reclaim their voice? What's some of the things that you do?
Oh, I would have to say listen to them and believe them. And I'm trained in solution focused therapy. So a lot of that is the active listening and then the rephrasing it to you. And when I have sat with a trauma survivor who maybe she was like me and told her story a number of times, and then when I reframe that to her and she starts crying because I got it the first time, I think that's a powerful moment. And then the other thing is helping them move from this, especially if you are a complex PTSD survivor and when you've your whole life you've been a victim, but moving from that, I'm a victim to know I can make decisions for myself and I can say no repeatedly. I can set those boundaries. I can choose not to do this anymore. Really, I think is the other thing that helps them. And
Yeah.
you probably experience similar things from coworkers of that person's just manipulating you, or they're just, as soon as they get out of like an inpatient unit, they're going to go right back to using, but they're not using today. Like I
Yeah.
always have that feedback, but today they're doing this. And I am a huge believer when I have people who relapse or go back to their ex or something of if you choose to stop that behavior again, you are starting from a stronger place. You've already done it once. For one
Yeah.
thing, you know you can do it. Two, you know what traps you need to look out for. That's a huge part of counseling. And I think just allowing them to lead, I think is probably some of the best things I do.
I really agree. And I love what you're focusing on here because we hear all the time, well, people don't change. That is not true. We are in the business of having that faith and that hope that people can change. They just have to want to. And maybe want to is not the right word. They have to find it within themselves that they can. They have to believe
Yeah.
in themselves, even just a mustard seed faith, right? Because it's hard to believe in yourself when you've relapsed a million times or you consistently make bad decisions. But one of the things we learned as social workers, there's a reason why we make those poor decisions at time, and it's usually trauma. Do you have more to say
Yeah.
about that?
I think that and trauma, when you look at what it does to your brain, it sets up this system where you're dependent on things that maybe you're not proud of. I work with people with all kinds of addictions, substance abuse, sexual addiction, emotional blackmail and stuff. And they really are like, I just feel unfulfilled, especially with the women I work with, sexual addiction. I don't know how to get this emotional need met without the sexual addiction piece. And also in our society, we minimize that kind of stuff because we don't talk about that as much. That's not really on the forefront. And I think when I have people who have a lot of trauma history and then they're like, I know I'm a sex addict, so they'll say things that break my heart. I deserved that rape, which is you never deserve that. And or I shouldn't put myself in that situation. So I think our traumatic brains downplay, how much control we have. And I think there are just a lot of systems in our lives that are setting up for people to continue to be in I not really carry that faith, not really be away from their true selves, their true path. Because I sometimes I don't think you really, even if you set out with the best intentions and you go home or you go back to the place where you were, all of these things come back to you. It's not just your negative thoughts. There's your daily habits, there's the people who you're with, your work, all of the pressures that come out. And I think when you're working with somebody who has experienced a lot of trauma for most of their lives, all of the good intentions that they set can go by the wayside if they just have to get these few things done. And
Right.
I don't know, I also think it could just be a matter of I'm not ready to do this. Like I thought I was, and then I left the hospital and went home, and I don't feel like I can really create that support system that I need. So,
Yeah, support's huge. Yeah.
yeah.
So for those who are still fumbling along with life, they haven't found what they feel is a purpose. They're just stuck, right? One of the symptoms I often see, and I'm sure you do too, with complex trauma is people can get pretty stuck. There is that fight, flight, and that freeze thing is often very huge for us. And so, what are some steps would you recommend for someone who's feeling a bit stuck? How do they go about getting unstuck and then working on their purpose from that point?
Some of the some of the things I recommend are first, it helps me to identify, are you a person that's like an overthinker? If you are you mostly in your brain? Or do you get feelings like in your heart or your gut? Because that's going to be the difference. So if you are a brain person, if you're thinking, I'm really going to recommend that you start journaling and dive into that to really identify those negative thoughts that are coming to you, the dreams that maybe are really disturbing. Let's understand that. But if you're a heart or a gut person, not always analyzing your thoughts are good. So I'm really going to work with you to identify the triggers that are in your body. What is it that's making you freeze? What does that feel like to you? What is it when your gut says this is not going to turn out right? What does that look like? And really integrating those body triggers. Eventually, I would like people to do both things, work with the mind and the body. But if you're starting, it's either top down or bottom up.
Yeah.
For people who are more integrated in their body, that would be more of the mindfulness movement to help keep your body calm and relaxed, breathing. This does help people with overthinking, but sometimes you have to start identifying those thoughts before you're like, okay, I do need to sit and just be relaxed for a minute. So those are,
Yeah,
yeah.
I like that you're acknowledging we can be basically you're working with people's personality here too. Some
Yeah.
of us are just naturally overthinkers and some of us are just naturally overfeelers. And really both types of therapy can be of service when the time is right. I also know that we're both very spiritual and we bring that component to our work. Can you say a little bit about how your spirituality is important to you as a person and then also in the trauma healing work that you do?
So for me, I think my spirituality and my faith has really helped me to forgive all of the people who've harmed me and also myself, because as people with trauma, you feel like I put myself there, and I know I've felt that way.
Sure.
And so forgiving myself, and the other piece is that because I believe in a higher power and God and the creator, I do feel like, okay, maybe some of this I had to live through. Maybe these really horrible things I had to live through because I wouldn't be able to provide as much healing to other people if I didn't experience that. Now, would I have liked to learn those lessons another way? Of course, but it does in the it helps me to say, okay, this wasn't a meaningfulness. Like this had meaning. It provides that to create that purpose. And I also believe that other people can be just as great of a healer without having the same experiences that I've had, because my faith also recognizes that other people have different aspects of different qualities. It's not me above everyone else. We're all here doing our
I
human
love that.
existence. So
Right.
we're all necessary.
Or maybe their suffering just looks different. Like maybe we can't relate to it. That doesn't mean they haven't had suffering. It just has a
Yeah.
different feel to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think making meaning out of our suffering has been super healing for me as well. So
Yeah.
I like that perspective.
And
And I wonder if we could really understand what true joy feels like if we hadn't had those opportunities to suffer. Boy, that sounded crappy, but you get me.
yeah. And lately, because it's Advent and they're talking about at church, they'll talk about when Jesus comes and the second coming as well as the first coming. So lately, I've been thinking if heaven is completely something that we as humans cannot even identify, like we don't have a possibility of understanding it, not even a mustard seed possibility. I keep thinking that will the joy that I experienced then be like something like way better than I'm thinking now? Like when people are where I live, a lot of people go on cruises and they tell me how wonderful it is. Excuse me, how everything's provided for. They don't have to do anything. It's great to just be. I'm like, maybe joy will be even better than that.
That's going to be exciting. Have you not been on a cruise? You're talking like you haven't been on
No, I
one.
haven't been on a cruise.
Okay. When you're ready, let me know because I'm going on many.
Okay. No.
Yeah, I love that. I actually do a lot of my training on cruises. So I get to have a business tax write-off and get training. It's been a win-win. It's not as relaxing as people that just do cruising for fun, but it helps me be able to have the best of both worlds. Otherwise, because it's cost prohibitive otherwise.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
would be great. And
Yeah.
so I was also going to say about forgiveness. I know a lot of people talk about religion or their faith and forgiveness, but one of the areas that really helped me tremendously with forgiving my parents was really being able to look at some of the things they did as maybe it really was the best that they could do at with the information they had. Not that I deserved it, but I know they both struggled with addiction. They struggled with financial insecurity most of my life. They didn't have as much education opportunities. My mom didn't. My dad went to college, but he finished, but he didn't work in the what he went to school in. And so sometimes I think because I hear other people's things, I look at the Bible and stuff, I'm like, maybe they really did. Not that I deserved what they did. And then also,
Yeah.
my mom is Native American. And so I am the second generation to be born off of reservation. And my grandmother went to boarding school and she never spoke about any of that. But we know from other family members how abusive it was in
Right.
South Dakota and how much abuse she experienced. And so when I have worked with elders and people in other tribes who experienced similar things, that also I feel like helped me with my forgiving my parents, forgiving my mom, that when you have that generational trauma where you really cannot understand, they didn't talk about it, so I didn't understand. But with the with my faith, it really has helped to being putting it in a different perspective because so many of the stories from the Bible are like long, like historically
Yeah.
long, and you're like, oh my God. When you look at it, you're like, oh my gosh, this is very similar to things that happen today, and this is how they wrote about it, and this is how they worked with that. And I
Yeah,
think,
the lineage of trauma, right? The lineage of the pain that and suffering. Yeah, I think it's so easy when we're a survivor to see life through just our lens and not the lens of the people we feel were perpetuators of our trauma. But we remembering, taking that pause, that beat to remember that they were also trauma survivors and maybe didn't have some of the opportunities that we now have. I think it really helps with our compassion,
mhm, I think,
which can lead to forgiveness too. Yeah, I know there's lots of things that my parents have done that I'm less than thrilled about, let's say.
yeah.
I remember, oh yeah, like my father had learning disabilities and really struggled with school and struggled with insecurity and all across. My mom was a complex trauma survivor too and didn't have all the opportunities that I have. And so it does help with the compassion for sure. But I agree with you. It doesn't mean we deserved what we got either.
No, I'm not saying that, but it does
I know.
help to, yeah. I was talking, so I'm the oldest and my sister is the youngest, and she was saying how she was neglected, and like my parents were like, here you go. I don't even want to see you. And for years and years, she felt because she witnessed the physical abuse that they did to me, that her neglect was nothing. Like she shouldn't have anything to complain about. And it wasn't until we were adults, it was probably 10 years ago that I told her, no, neglect can be just as bad, if not worse. I said, to her,
Being
I was,
invisible.
look,
Yeah.
not only did you witness the violence that was perpetrated on me, then you were told you weren't even worthy of their attention, not even their bad attention. So that's hugely horrible. So and then I guess working as a social worker, looking at that, you can also say like that when you vocalize that in your family, it really does start moving the generational trauma to something else. Because I've had my cousins and other family members have told me, like, you've been doing amazing stuff. And I love working with generational curse breakers. People are like, I don't know what happened in my family. I know it was bad. I have kids and I don't want to do that. I feel like I've done a pretty good job and I've messed up some too with my daughter. So the worst part was when her father and I separated. I, she was 14 and she was like, I don't want to live with you anymore. I want to live with your dad. And she could be teenager, a little verbally abusive and get in my face aggressive. So I finally just said, okay, fine. If you don't want to live with me, you can live with your dad. And I felt it was a rejection, and I'm an adult, but I'm like, what am I going to do? But I still tried to keep in contact with her, and she chose not to spend time with me. And now I look back and I'm like, she was 14. She was very busy with her friends. She was very busy with school. She had a lot of activities. But it was only recently that I told her that every time it was my turn for visitation, we had joint custody, but she wanted to live with her dad. So had visitation time, probably 3 out of 4 times, either he would call or text and say she doesn't want to see you, but I still would make the effort. I had to drive over an hour to see her every time, and I would just do something else and check in later and see how things went. And she was like, I had no idea anything like that happened. So this is like when I hear people talking about their kids being estranged from them, I'm like, sometimes that's just the place where they are in their life. Because now my daughter and I are pretty close. We spend time together. She'll be visiting me. But I do feel like there are other things. As trauma survivor, you just see this one thing. And when you can get out in other areas. So I think
It
that's
helps
pretty
with that
great.
perspective shifting.
I know. You really have to
Yeah,
do that.
yeah, I really do. All right, we have to wrap up. I don't want to, of course.
No.
I just want to state that my deep gratitude for the work that you're doing in the world. And for those of you who aren't aware, Michelle's licensed in 3 states, getting re-licensed in Virginia, which makes 4 states, and she does teletherapy. And we knew each other when we worked for the Department of Defense, so she's able to serve veterans. I feel very confident referring survivors to her, whether it's military trauma or interpersonal trauma. Michelle, thank you for that. I also have immense gratitude for you because of you're just starting out private practice after working with all these industries. And so I know it takes a minute to get your business up and going. And despite that, you are taking the time to not only be a speaker, but to be a sponsor. So I am deeply touched by that. And I just want you to know about my gratitude I have. The money that you have invested in this will go to promoting the summit with the ad spend, but also some of the money will go towards sponsoring survivors into the This Is Us Healing from Trauma membership. We're going to take some of the money and create 4 scholarships for women, about 6 to 9 months, and the membership for them. So if you're listening to this and if you're struggling financially, Michelle and I have both been there. We both
Yep.
know that there's been times where we've had some financial struggles as single mothers, or just being a social worker hasn't always been abundant with the pay. And so we have a heart for women who are struggling, and so we will have 4 scholarships available. Thank you, Michelle, for setting that for the women as well.
Yep. Thank you, Karen, for having me here. And I look forward to meeting everyone in the summit next January. That's not too long.
It's not too long. Thank you again, Michelle.
All right.
Thank you for listening in today. Please join us next week, same day and time. Also, I would love for you to check out my website, healthrivedream.com.